Good evening, everyone. First, I want to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. Prime Minister, Rachel, Senator, thank you for your leadership, and all of you who have been so hard at work for this very important work. I also want to say, when it comes to me personally, my parents raised me to be a feminist, and now my wife and I are raising our children to be feminists. So it is heartening to be with so many Canadian partners and allies to celebrate our progress in advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights. So thank you for your collaboration, thank you for your support, and thank you for your tenacity. Your belief in the transformative power of ensuring that women and girls can realize their health and rights is fierce, and it helped to make our 10-year commitment to global health and rights a reality. Now, it has already been 4 years since Canada hosted Women Deliver in Vancouver, and it was then at that time that our Prime Minister, who's with us today, announced that Canada would increase global health funding to an average of $1.4 billion annually by 2023, half of which is dedicated to SRHR. Now, with just a few short weeks, we will be at the Women Deliver Conference in Kigali, and today is a fitting moment to recognize the importance of this commitment and what we have achieved so far. So in 1 year alone, our investments in family planning resulted in an estimated 2.5 million women and couples receiving contraceptive services. Now, this has prevented an estimated of 1.1 million unintended pregnancies and 347,000 unsafe abortions. Now, that translates into approximately 1,800 lives saved in 1 year alone. Our investments in SRHR are critical to supporting bodily autonomy, reducing poverty, contributing to gender equality, and ensuring an inclusive economic recovery from the pandemic. But as our Liberal government rises up to the challenge for SRHR, we remain concerned that there is also a growing movement against women's rights, and particularly against SRHR. Well-organized groups are attempting to roll back long-standing legal and policy protections at regional, national, and at the global level. The overturning of Roe v. Wade and what has taken place since in the US are glaring examples of this regression. So sadly, we are not immune to this type of backward thinking in our own country, so right here in Canada. We have members of Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party wanting to roll back the clock on women's reproductive rights and freedoms. Now, it is important that, more important than ever, that we focus on comprehensive SRHR and integrating SRHR into universal health care. And Canada will work to advance this priority at the UN General Assembly this year. And I'm very happy to report that Canada is on track to hit our ambitious target of investing $700 million in comprehensive SRHR this fiscal year. And we will continue to grow our neglected area programming and to highlight its importance. So, and yeah, yes, you can be clapping for that one. We know that this will not solve everything. We know that there is much more work that needs to be done when we remain committed to this, just like all of you. So just last week, standing up our SRHR and advocating for the neglected areas was a key topic in my discussion with Canada's heads of mission when they gathered here in Ottawa. Clear direction to them that they need to focus on this, and they will. I also raised this discussion at the G20 Development Ministers meeting in India just 2 days ago, so, which I just actually got back today. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with the neglected areas, it includes comprehensive sexual education, safe abortions, post-abortion care, family planning, advocacy for SRHR reform, and sexual and gender-based violence prevention and response. So thank you to all the partners in the room tonight who have just championed so hard on these topics. So we count on your experience, your expertise to support effective, sustainable, and oftentimes sensitive SRHR programming, working in partnership with governments and local civil society organizations. So on that note, allow me to introduce Canada's new signature SRHR initiative called She Soars, okay? So say that with me, She Soars, okay? So this program level commitment will support Canada's 10-year commitment to global health and rights. She Soars will further brand our neglected area work, pulling together multiple initiatives across different regions and helping to ensure that we maximize their overall impact. So as part of this new initiative, I'm announcing that 50% of our SRHR commitment will go towards neglected areas starting next year. And I got to save some for later, so I'll have more to say at Women Delivered next month as well, okay? So for the next 7 years, the She Soars initiative will focus on 3 areas. First, advancing sexual and reproductive health services, particularly in neglected areas. Second, protecting SRHR in fragile contexts. And third, standing up and advocating for SRHR at all levels to advance comprehensive, global, regional, and country-led SRHR priorities. So we remain committed to transparency and engagement with Canadians, especially civil society organizations and other stakeholders who advance these priorities. So in fact, we look forward to releasing our 2nd annual report on the 10-year commitment this fall. And finally, so let me end on a personal note, because every trip that I go on, I go on a lot of field visits, and I make SRHR a priority for my visits. And I can give you multiple examples. I'm just going to give you a few. So I was fortunate enough to see some of the great work that has been done on the ground. So whether it was a project to help teens access menstrual hygiene products, or a project to educate girls in schools about how to safeguard against sexual and gender-based violence, I've seen firsthand how this work really matters and how, more importantly, is making a difference around the world. So I remain a very proud She Decides champion, and I will, without fail, continue to be a strong advocate for bodily autonomy for women and girls under She Soars. And now, I'd like to introduce another She Decides champion, our Prime Minister, who has always stood up unequivocally and unapologetically for women's right to choose. And Prime Minister, I just want to make as a personal note, when you made the decision to have a 50% women in your cabinet, that for me was a huge privilege to be part of. And more importantly, just think about that one decision that a leader makes has created a ripple around the world. Not only other governments are doing the same thing, other organizations are also taking on this role. I just want to say leadership matters. So Prime Minister, it's my privilege to introduce you. Thank you.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Thank you, Harj, for your words, and thank you for your tremendous leadership. I know you're going to once again do us all proud as you announce next month in Kigali Canada's continued leadership on this very important issue. Thank you for your words and your work, Kelly, Maliha, Rita, and Lauren. And thank you, all of you here tonight, for continuing to shine a light on the needs and rights of women around the world. But more than just shining a light on the needs and rights, thank you for being activists. Thank you for stepping up and fighting and doing and building and pushing back and continuing to push through and making sure that you're bothering people, that you're waking people up, that you keep pushing on us too. Your job is to continue to fight and push and make sure that these conversations cannot be brushed aside, cannot be shrugged off, but need to be acted on, need to be responded to, need to be stepping up on. Because it matters deeply, and everything you do, no matter how small it feels in the moment, is part of a big push to make sure the arc of the moral universe continues to bend in the right direction. Because everyone should have control over their bodies and have access to safe and reproductive rights and care. Our government is unequivocal about protecting these rights here in Canada and around the world, notably as part of Canada's feminist foreign policy. This has proudly been our position since the very start. I'll admit, though, back in 2015, as we were proclaiming and announcing and making commitments about the direction that Canada was going to take and would take as a government over the coming years, we all kind of thought that having reached that point, progress on this was going to be inevitable, or at least easier now. That equality and rights for women would continue to move forward steadily and even faster. But unfortunately, we have to say in this room, and we have to say loudly out there as well, we're seeing progress stalling, and in many places women's rights even being reversed. As Minister Sajjan mentioned, the overturning of Roe versus Wade last year was shocking. In Afghanistan, the return of the Taliban means women and girls are being denied the rights to an education that so many of us fought for over the past decades. These are just a couple of very specific examples of the backlash against women's rights we're seeing around the world. But in fact, a UN report just released this week noted that bias against women remains unchanged over the last decade. And progress on gender equality, something fought for over generations, is now backsliding. So yes, this is worrying. But when I look around this room at the work and advocacy and actions all of you do and take, I remain hopeful. Hopeful in knowing that the work we are doing still continues to move the needle. Hopeful that we can still improve the lives of women and girls around the world. Hopeful and certain that by helping provide the health care they need, we can empower more women and girls to be in charge of their own futures. Comme Harjit l'a mentionné, cet investissement dans SheSoars va être essentiel pour aider notre gouvernement à obtenir de meilleurs résultats possibles dans le cadre de notre engagement de 10 ans en matière de santé et de droits dans le monde. On va travailler avec des partenaires sur le terrain pour faciliter l'accès aux services de santé sexuelle et reproductive, notamment grâce à l'éducation et à des soins liés à l'avortement sans risque. Our investment in SheSoars will not only help women and girls be in charge of their own future, in many cases it ensures that they have a future. Because protecting safe abortion care saves women's lives. Now, I know all of you here are fighting for women's rights around the world, but that means we need to stay steadfast at home, too. And I know all of you as activists in charge of nonprofits and charities and independent organizations are very careful about being nonpartisan in your approach, and that is exactly right. You need to. But we can't fight with one hand tied behind our backs either. We have to call things out when people are taking increasingly dangerous and irresponsible stances in trying to turn back the clock on women's rights. One of Pierre Poilievre's candidates in next week's by-election on Monday is actively campaigning against a woman's right to choose. Mr. Poilievre himself is staying notably quiet on this issue so as not to hurt his chances. But this week, one of his most notoriously anti-choice MPs attempted to reopen the debate on a woman's right to choose. And Pierre Poilievre has said he'd be voting in favor of that. On voit une montée inquiétante de la rhétorique anti-femme en ligne. Et tous les dirigeants ont la responsabilité de s'opposer à ces propos haineux. Et pourtant, on a vu ce chef de l'opposition officielle intégrer des mots-clics misogynes dans ses vidéos sur les médias sociaux. You may have also seen my interaction with a young man earlier this spring where the topic came up. I've really enjoyed that. We can never forget that sexual and reproductive health and rights is not just a woman's issue. This is an issue that impacts us all. Women's rights are human rights, and men need to be allies and part of the conversation. And in those spaces that still remain where there aren't any women, we must advocate for their voices as men. We must advocate for their rights and make sure we are creating spaces to include them in those conversations as well directly. Merci pour tout le travail que vous faites pour aider à promouvoir et à protéger les droits des femmes, des filles et des personnes de diverses identités de genre dans le monde entier. L'engagement de notre gouvernement est plus fort que jamais et on continue notre travail avec des partenaires internationaux. I really wished that as of 2015, we would have seen things getting better. And there is a lot that we have done and continue to do. And perhaps that has contributed to some of the pushback and the backlash. Anytime there have been social changes and advances, backlash has come. But we know that that just means we have to continue ever more steadfast and ever stronger in fighting for the better world we all know will come. in standing up for everyone's rights, in pushing for greater access to abortion and reproductive health and rights, greater access to contraception, having often uncomfortable conversations with leaders around the world who are allowing the backsliding to happen, being unequivocal about where we stand as a country, and also demonstrating through the success of the policies that we've put in place over the past 7 years, from early learning and childcare to forcing provinces to step up on improving abortion access by withdrawing funds, to continually talking about it and pushing it and fighting for it in the House of Commons, demonstrating that these are fights that matter on a social level, but also that matter deeply on an economic level. Our $10 a day childcare has delivered the highest participation of women in the workforce in Canadian history, and we're only getting started. But standing up for women's rights, standing up as allies to ensure that everyone understands the path we are on will not be stopped, that we will keep fighting and keep standing together until we get to that better world. I know we're going to get there. If we can remain hopeful and hardworking in the face of these challenges, I have no doubt that our work together will help build a better future for everyone. Merci pour tout ce que vous faites. Thank you.